One of the things we experimented with was an incentive structure. So there was a scoring. So people get scores based on how often they participate, how many grades they assign to others, and how their ideas are graded by other people. And so all those scores are online. So I tell you that as an incentive to go in to the California Report Card yourself, if you haven't already. You can rack up a score. There'll be other incentives offered in the future. How many of you, by the way, have tried the California Report Card? Okay, good. So almost everyone has experienced it. So with that, I want to again say it has been an enormous pleasure working with the team of individuals that you see up here. They are just an all-star team. I've been teaching for 20 years, and they're really among the very best group of students and colleagues I've ever worked with. So with that, I want to say that I've also had the enormous pleasure to work with Lieutenant Governor's team, in particular Chris Garland, Conrad Gregory, Andrea Koski. They've been actively working with us, exchanging ideas from the beginning, and it's been a delightful opportunity to collaborate with people working in the government who are actually out there to make a difference. And I want to say that Lieutenant Governor Newsom, I've had the pleasure to know for a number of years. He's a hugely successful entrepreneur. He was the mayor of San Francisco, as you know, for 6 years. Now is our lieutenant governor. I think this is just a one step on the way. I'm going to be looking forward to his future number of steps. I'm very excited because of the way he thinks. He is really a doer. He's really someone who takes action and really thinks deeply. So with that, I want to introduce Lieutenant Governor.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Well, I'm having a hell of a good time. This is fun for me. This is a pretty remarkable presentation, and Ken, you just deserve an enormous amount of credit for your diligence and your follow-through and your commitment, true commitment, not just passing interest to this effort. And, if I'm coming across a little more aggressive or crass, because I care deeply about this. This is what it's, for me, all about. The amount of time and energy we consume about getting elected is extraordinary and disproportionate, because getting elected is not governing. We tend to do a remarkably good job, relatively speaking, amplifying your voice, inviting you in to participate, encouraging you to volunteer, write a check, and get you to the polls, and have a conversation in the process. But boy, once the election's over, we turn off your voices. All that energy, all of that engagement, and all of a sudden, all that momentum, it just dissipates. I'm reminded back in 2008, as we were all mesmerized, Republicans and Democrats, even if you were on the Clinton campaign, you had to be impressed with what was happening with that Obama campaign. MyBarackObama.com, a new platform for engagement. 35,000 self-organizing communities coming together across every conceivable and imaginable difference. A real two-way conversation was had by thousands and thousands of people every single day. The candidate at the time, Senator Obama, talked about the fundamental value proposition of our time. Change starts from the bottom up. Yes, we can. He campaigned in a remarkably disciplined way, using a new framework of thinking, new metaphors, not assembly line or machine thinking, but really platform thinking, real active citizen engagement in the process of that campaign. And he wanted, you recall, to continue the conversation. And you may recall this intimately because you may have participated in this. Right after the election was over, he said, I'm not going to be one of those politicians that turns off your voice. It's not you vote, I decide. It's yes, we can. Change starts, remember, from the bottom up. And he decided to transfer out of the MyBarackObama.com platform and created a new platform for civic engagement, change.gov. And he invited people in that unprecedented day to continue the conversation by having an unprecedented conversation with millions of people online and thousands of people physically that assembled in this remarkable town hall to engage the president-elect on what should be his priorities and your priorities, not for the first 100 days, a tired old stereotypical frame of reference for old-time thinking of politics, but for the next 100 years as we restore, he said, not just formal authority in position of changing from Republican to Democrat, but extend a moral framework for governance, not just in our country, around the world. And he invited people on that fateful day, and an unprecedented number of people engaged. You may have done so. In fact, you can go back and literally look at the static website. It's no longer active. It was a transition website, and it said, what's on your mind? Is it the war in Iraq? If it's the war in Afghanistan, is it the war on terror? Is it the financial meltdown? Remember, this is after Lehman Day, September 15, 2008, just happened, and now we're here in the transition. What was on your mind? And folks came out, and the president-elect came in front of everybody and literally opened up an envelope of what was on people's minds. The top priority on that fateful day, the number one priority on people's minds for the next 100 years of this country, to set the tone and tenor of change. Was it Afghanistan? Was it Iraq? Was it the war on terror? Was it dealing with the consequences of the financial meltdown? The number one priority for the American people was legalize marijuana. And the president-elect responded almost precisely the way you just responded. The difference was the online community and those assembled weren't happy with his response. He was criticized overwhelmingly for not taking them seriously. Two-way conversations are dangerous. What he did is what 99.9% of us, this is not an indictment of President Obama, but he did what 99.9% of political pundits would have encouraged him to do and advised him. He transitioned the change.gov site to the whitehouse.gov site, the old website that has existed since the late 1990s. The bottom-up candidate became immediately the top-down president. Instead of yes, we can, it's become yes, he can. You vote, he decides. The metaphors of organic bottom-up thinking were shifted to the old machine thinking, the giant vending machine, as Donald Kettle used to refer to it. You put in $1 taxes, you get limited choices: police, fire, healthcare, education, defense. And if you don't like what you get, come back during the election and kick the machine, shake the machine. You've all done it to a vending machine. And that's the politics we have. What's the size of the machine? What we're arguing for and what this represents is something radically different. It's about amplifying people's voices every day of the year, not just every day, once a year when there's an election. It's about treating you not as subjects, citizens, but as citizens, as active and participatory, and give you a sense that you are engaged in designing the life of your community, our region, our state, our nation, and the world we're trying to build. And I think this is fundamental, because I think one of the reasons we're seeing such a significant decline in voter participation is you get it. You've seen this movie over and over again. You've seen those candidates spinning the same yarn, all that authenticity, all that talk of change, and all that enthusiasm, and once they get in it, it's as if governing de-geniuses them. All that originality is taken out, and the system buries that. And they conform, and they're lost. Sure, you'll give them another chance because you think there's still an ember left, and maybe in that last term when they're not having to go back in front of the voters, they'll be their authentic self again. But invariably, you're just left a little disappointed until that new guy or gal comes along and says, well, I'm the person that will be on the shining horse, and I'm going to come change the day. But you've gone through this over and over and over again. So something, I argue, radically different has to take shape. We have got to invert the proverbial pyramid, because I think the days of the guy or gal on the white horse come save the day, if they ever existed, I think no longer is applicable to the world we're living in. Something radical is taking shape in this world. No one understands it better than Marina. She is talking extensively about it. But the industrial economy is run out of gas. It's stalled. It's in atrophy. You're seeing the contours of change everywhere. Don Tapscott writes eloquently about this. You think about what's happened in the music industry. A guy named Steve comes along. Something called iTunes. The entire music industry overnight was destroyed. None of you buying albums now. You buy songs. It's customized to you. It's not from one to many. It's not standardized. It's now customized. Same things happen in the media industry, publishing. I learned that the hard way with a book. You already know what's happened in the newspaper industry. A guy named Craig came along. Remember that? This guy Craig Newmark. Who's that guy? Well, he gutted the entire financial model for newspapers because Craig came along with a list. And overnight, everything shifted. You're seeing the same debate. I was down in L.A. last week, raging debate. Those pink mustaches are starting to appear down there as well. Not just up here in the Bay Area. Lyft and Sidecar and Travis with that app that's made the entire taxi industry shudder because they've had a monopoly all those years. And all of a sudden now this guy, Travis, comes up with something called Uber Cab. And the share economy. Contours of radical change in terms of our approach. The industrial mindset is giving way to something completely new. And there's new and operating principle in this new mindset. It's not selling down your vision. It's not broadcasting. It's not one-way conversations anymore. It's bottom-up thinking. It's side-by-side. It's networked. It's collaborative. It's open. It's participatory. Everything being designed for participation. And it's a framework of this, which goes to the principles that have been advanced today. It's this idea that no matter how smart you think you are, Bill Joy's law applies. Co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Now, how smart you think you are, or your organization, if you think you've got the best people, you're full of it. Because no matter how good your organization is, the best people work for someone else. Meaning there's remarkable intelligence outside the borders of your organization. How do we engage that? How do we network that? How do we pull it in? Thus, the principles that we're trying to advance here. And I really believe in this. Because to me, this is an antidote for cynicism. This is an antidote for a lot of the frustration that all of us are experiencing as it relates to government and its lack of engagement. So this report card, I acknowledge, is simple, but it's also profound because we all understand it. And the principles meet people where they already are. We don't have to reinvent the world. We just have to form new connections. It's been done in the state of Karnataka, again, Bangalore, which is within the state of Karnataka, in India. People embraced it and celebrated. Their framework is around corruption in India. But ours can be around something much more enlivening. And I want to just thank the team here at CITRIS, because not only took this seriously, they delivered. And in real time, just a couple of months, I thought maybe you get 500 folks to participate, maybe 1,000. In fact, I remember when you hit 1,000, and we were all celebrating when you sent me over that text. But to get close to 7, now plus 7,000 people already to check it out, and about 30% of them to take the time to fill out these grades, and then all these folks, including many of you, thank you, that are here, saying, you know what, here's how to make it better, gets me now motivated to follow through on this commitment. So here's just briefly, in the seconds I have, what I'm looking forward to doing. Working with Ken and the team, the next iteration of this is now going to be more granular. The next iteration of this is going to be more inclusive. We recognize there's limitations. Not everybody is on a mobile device. Not everyone has access to broadband. Not everyone speaks English. We obviously have to reconcile that as we scale this principle. Second, we have to recognize that what was on our mind, immigration reform, issues associated with K through 12 education, marriage equality, the debate around decriminalization, they may not be on your mind. And the issues of fracking, and the issues of emergency preparedness, the infrastructure issues in our state may be more topical. And so we're certainly looking forward to learning more about what's on your mind and incorporating them to the next survey. But more important, perhaps, to me than anything else, is you have legitimately inspired me just on that suggestion list, and I am grateful because already with this survey, and this is for what it's worth, but this is why I get so motivated, the issue of emergency preparedness was the last thing I thought anyone cared about. We all care about it after the fact. But God bless, we're all inundated with, what happened to that airline? That's time-consuming. Getting prepared for 3 days on our own without local government to provide any services, electricity or otherwise, that's a little bit cumbersome. You can't just turn on a TV and get all that information. And we've got to change that. This was a top priority for me as mayor of San Francisco. I was obsessed. I was so convinced. You're lucky I'm not mayor. I was convinced when I was mayor there'd be an earthquake. Luckily, there never was one. And I consumed myself with updating our emergency operations plan, created something called 72hours.org that won a lot of recognition and awards, and made a more robust program through our neighborhood emergency response teams and volunteer initiative, put a siren system. You know it only if you're in San Francisco Tuesday at noon. It offends you because there's a voice. This is just a test. But God bless, when there's a major disaster, we're able to do what we never were able to do in 1989, and that's let everyone know. No, in the Marina District where I was, the entire Bay Bridge did not collapse. We were convinced it had down in the Marina and panicked as a consequence. Or that those folks in Bayview heard the entire Marina District had burned down. It hadn't. But we had no way to communicate that. All these things were part of that, but at the state, we're not doing those things. So because of your example and because of this project, we, and it's nice to be Lieutenant Governor, have this wonderful work group and team that we're reconvening that existed in statute but has not actually been engaged. And we are now working with some FEMA folks, and we're going to get the state back on track to aggressively and proactively engage in a much more robust conversation around disaster preparedness. I don't want to oversell that, but I also want to just acknowledge the good work in this. So thank you guys for being part of this, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Gavin, you're amazing. Thank you.